So I'm pretty happy with the drawing now. I've gone through, I've done my reflection of the two sides. I've also extended all of the lines, and I have cleared out information that should exist behind the bird cage. So I cleaned out all of those sort of edges of the slab, which was behind, I think. Constantly finding little bits and pieces, but I think it's pretty good. So I'm ready now to go into my layout space, and I know we've talked about this a few times, but it is a little tricky, so let's go through it just one more time to make sure that everybody is kind of clear on the basic steps. So I'm going to be focused on this particular piece. So when I go to layouts, I'm going to go ahead. This is the layout that I was building when we were in class together, but let's start with a new one. So I'm going to add a new layout. I've asked you guys to use an ArcE size, and let's make it a landscape so we can fit all of our drawings. So it does default to basically having all of the information all in the same space. And so I'll need to scale and zoom into the areas that I want. The other thing that I want to do though is back in the model space, make sure that all of my layers are turned on so that I don't end up with kind of a funny situation later when I'm trying to get fairly consistent results. So in the model space, I have all my layers turned on. Now when I go back here, I really should be seeing everything. And what I want to do is turn off the layers within this view. So let's just go ahead. Let's do a couple of things. Let's go ahead and change the scale. First, I'm going to remember that we have our page. If we double click twice outside the detail, we have our page and we have its layouts. It's a 40 by 36, but I could edit that if I needed to do that. I also have the detail, which is essentially the frame through which I'm looking at the model. And again, this is where I'm going to set the scale. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in just so that I can kind of focus in on my particular drawing, and then I will kind of adjust the scale. But you can see I'm already probably a lot bigger than I need to be. I'm going to go ahead and squeeze this frame a little bit so it's a little bit easier for me to kind of navigate and find my piece and not be on that big sheet. So if I double click, now I can begin to drag the screen around and I can zoom in a little bit better. So now I know that as I sort of change the scale of my frame, that my object will be sort of inside there. But if I click on the frame, now I can see I'm still really not in the 1/8 inch. Remember, if we have a ratio, if we're setting up a ratio for a number of inches on the layout, representing a number of feet in the model, we want to be at a 1:8 complex ratio, inches to feet. If I'm inches and inches or feet and feet, I'll want to be 8 times 12 or 96. So right now I can set up my simple ratio. I'm going to go ahead and return. So it will change to the right scale. And I'm just going to drag until I am happy with the position of the object. Oh, it's barely fitting. Let's just go ahead and accept that location. And I can also go ahead and open it up a little bit more, which I think I will. I'm going to go ahead and give myself a little bit more room. And at this point, I'm going to lock the window, which locks both the scale and the position. So now when I zoom in and out, I'm not changing the size of the object. I'm really just sort of going into that window a little bit further. And you can see if I go back to the model space that I had already pre-selected certain line weights in order to make my job a little bit easier. So when I'm selected on the layers, you can see that these layers here are the set of 2D drawn elements, my 2D, my hidden, as well as my visible. And I know for this drawing, I've only got the curves which are not in section and the clipping plane intersection, which is essentially the set of lines that are intersecting with the clipping plane and which will be my heavy sectional outline. So when I come over here into the layout space, if I double click inside this square, and so I can go ahead and change that at this point though. This is my layer settings and this is my layout settings. So remember, your layout settings are going to have this extra little page And if you double click inside of this box, you can start to change these. So I'm going to go ahead and just check out a preview to see if those line weights look good. And I'm going to go ahead and use the print command. And you can either create a PDF through the print command or open in preview, and we can kind of look at those line weights. So as I'm looking at this, I'm already seeing that I'm losing a little bit of detail if we zoom in a little bit. There's no question where the section is, but they're really too heavy for this drawing. And here I'm really not able to see my mullion. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust my line weights to get a little bit better differentiation. Again, I've already double clicked inside of my frame, and I'm going to come over here and change that 1.4 to a 1 point line. Now we can see those are much more in balance. I'm still a little bit dark, so I may go ahead and just change the line quality just in these couple of areas. I'm going to go ahead and change this down to 0.8 and just see what that line looks like. Okay, maybe a little bit better, still a little dark. Yeah, now I can at least see the inside of those, but I think these mullions, again, are really small for this kind of work. So I still feel like it's a little dark. Let's try one more. So I've landed on a set of line weights that I almost like. I like them very well for the primary elements of the section. These are okay. They're a little heavy for the mullions. Here they're still too heavy, but it's pretty close. And this is a 0.6 heavy line and a 0.3 light line. But as I'm looking at this, I'd still like to emphasize other elements. So I'd like to emphasize this piece. So I'm going to go ahead and just take those individual items and give them a distinct line weight in order to sort of give them a little differentiation. So as I'm trying to change these individual elements, I'm simply selecting the object that I'm interested in, and I can go under the properties, and even though typically this will be set to adopt the properties of the layer, I can in this case change those to have their own line weight just for the objects themselves, and I'm going to call that a 0.35, and I think that'll give it just enough differentiation. And the same thing here. It's a little bit darker. I might go even just a little bit of a step up, but you can start to see that this is a little bit lighter. I would like to see these things in the background even differentiated from the frame. So perhaps I'll turn that to a 0.35, pull this up even a little bit more, maybe pull the column up. But I did change these. It looks like I changed some of them. The mullions, I didn't catch that one somehow, so that is definitely better. Let's see if we can fix the rest of it. So I'm turning the camera back on because I wanted you to see there's a little bit of subtlety in the differences here, and this is what I'm after. This is a 0.3 line, this is a 0.5 line, and this is a 0.6. I'm looking for a 0.4. I need to change my settings. But then this is a very light, this is about a 0.2 line. And so I'm really starting to see hierarchically what is least important, what is sort of secondary, primary, and major. This is really the pieces that I'm cutting my section through. But I've got a little inconsistency here, and so I'm going to keep refining it.